Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cromulent Craic Show. This is Dillhouse speaking.
And I'm Duffy Beer, or Duff Beer Duffy.
Duff Beer.
Duff Beer.
Duff Beer Duffy.
And we're just a couple of embiggened Egypts who are here to chat about every Simpson episode from the very beginning.
So grab a Duff Beer, a crab juice, or a frosty chocolate milkshake, and let's get started. Just before we start today, I don't know if you can hear it, but we have a wee cat with us, a wee snowball. So a third member
We have a
of the
special guest,
special guest.
Barbie, so if you hear purring or anything,
That's the cat Barbie.
it's me.
So Duffy Beer, how are you feeling today?
I'm good. I am very good. We are feeling excited to go on an Odyssey, our very own Odyssey with this episode.
With Homer?
With Homer's Odyssey, I suppose you could say.
We're going on Homer's Odyssey. But is it an exciting one? Or is it a convoluted one personal opinion of me, I find the actual Odyssey book written by Homer to be quite convoluted and confusing to this day and age. And maybe this episode's kind of like that too.
Yeah, I think the Wishbone version of Homer's Odyssey was the best
Yeah,
version.
definitely.
This episode, well, we'll see.
We've got a good review coming up for it. Good. Stay tuned, everyone. Stay tuned.
So today we're doing the third episode of Homer's Odyssey. So it was written by Jake Hogan and Wallace Wolodarski, or Wally Wolodarski. That's a tongue twister. And directed by Wes Anderson, I wish.
Wes Archer.
Wes Archer. And it aired in America all the way back on January 21st, 1990.
I think Wes Archer wishes that he had the career of Wes Anderson too, probably.
Well, that's a bit of a Freudian slip because, Wally, we'll call him Wally. It's just easier.
Wally Wolodarski. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
He's done a lot of things actually with Wes Anderson. I'll get into that in a minute. But his writing partner Jake Hogan, he co-wrote a lot of episodes for Tracy Ullman's show. Obviously The Simpsons. He wrote for Frasier, so good sitcom career, yeah.
Pretty big 90s shows then. Yeah. Frasier was big, wasn't it? Yeah. Frasier was huge.
It was.
Was it before The Simpsons?
I think no, it was after. I think it was like say 1994, wasn't it? Around it was kind of like the sort of more mid-90s.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
It was like Posh Friends.
Posh Friends. And then Wally, he's an American writer, actor, and film director. So he
dipped his toes in a lot more things than Jake Hogan. Then
it's just a much more colorful kind of his career kind of thing. Actually, the character Osho was based on him. So apparently he had a big fuzzy head. Yeah, so apparently Osho Man was based on Wally. Big woolly head of him. And yeah, he worked with Wes Anderson. So a lot of things. He's in Rushmore, he's in the Darjeeling Limited, Fantastic Mr. Fox.
He worked with Wes Archer and Wes Anderson?
All the Weses. Wes Craven, maybe?
Wes Craven, is it? So in Fantastic Mr. Fox, he was Kylie.
He was Kylie. So the little possum who always zones out the whole time. And he was also in the Grand Budapest Hotel, kind of one of the hotel owners, when they're all ringing each other.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And he was in the French Dispatch. I think he was a journalist there. He was always just very cheerful and just a little. He must be a buddy of, obviously, the way Wes Anderson gets.
He's like, I've got a little fun role for you then for my movie.
It's a lot of cronyism in his movies where it's like, I got my friends. We're just gonna put them in every single movie. And along with his wife Maya Forbes, he has written screenplays for The Rocker with Wayne Wilson. Have you seen that?
I've never seen that.
I watched that back a few years ago. It's all right. Yeah, it's kind of Wayne Wilson. It's kind of like School of Rock, but for more of an adult. But it's not. It's nowhere near as good as School of Rock.
Wayne Wilson's pretty good though.
He's very, and it was kind of around the time when, the way he was in Super and things that were kind of flopping a lot.
Yeah.
So with his wife, he's written DreamWorks Monsters vs. Aliens.
I've seen that.
Yeah, I've seen that, and that's a good movie. It's kind of it's not standout DreamWorks kind of stuff, but it's still very good. And he wrote the third Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie.
After Roderick Rules?
after Roderick. So of the Holy Trilogy, it's pretty good. Like I love those movies.
They're better than they didn't try to reboot it or something.
Yeah,
It's
not my hashtag, not my Roderick.
not my Roderick.
And he also wrote, they wrote A Dog's Purpose.
And The Dog's Purpose is one you've intentionally been avoiding, Duff Beer.
Yeah, I remember back when before it was released, there was a video, TMZ. I know TMZ aren't very trustworthy, but they released footage of the poor dog, one of the dogs that was in the film, and he was being like pushed into water, and so
animals were harmed in the making of the movie.
Potentially, yeah. They were saying, the dog just wasn't in a good mood that day. He was trained to do this, and the poor dog was just like, it just was very bad kind of publicity for the movie. Oh. And then I just tried reading the Wikipedia page even, and it's just literally a movie about a dog being reincarnated and dying and being killed. And
well, I hope Wally wasn't like too involved in the dog being pushed in the water.
No, well, he was on the writer, so that's more of a direction thing, really. But it just, I don't know if A Dog's Purpose is really worse, kind of.
And they had then another project together, him and his wife, didn't it? It was a bit of a strange one for a couple.
Yeah. So they have a film called Seeing Other People.
Somebody was trying to hint at somebody else there.
Maybe they were going through, I don't know, kind of spicy stuff at the time. But yeah, that's a 2004 American comedy about a couple. Well, you can kind of get the gist. Seeing other people. A couple decide they want to see other people before their wedding, and I just think it's a bit of a strange movie to write with your wife. Again, different strokes for different folks, but I don't know. And what else has he's directed a certain movie, Dylan?
A masterpiece, you could say.
A masterpiece.
Was it Sorority Boys in 2002?
Boys. Yes. And
we watched this movie and we went into this expecting the lowest brow comedy available. I think we were literally expecting it to be the worst movie we've ever seen.
I was expecting to just be totally offended and being like, this is going to be like frat boy movies of the early noughties, so expect every single misogynistic, racist, homophobic, every single
frat boy culture, college culture kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think the critics like absolutely went to town on it. It was so panned.
Yeah. So basically the story of Sorority Boys, it's about a group of college boys who dress up as girls in order to prove their innocence for a crime. Money got stolen from their dorm room or something, and their whole frat is accusing them of doing it. And so for whatever reason, their dorm
treats girls like
dogs.
Not very well.
Yeah.
So it's like
they have a whole walk of shame
scenario for them to have to dress up as girls and go to the girls and pretend to be girls in the girls' college house.
Yeah, and it's not like the hot girls apparently. It's the girls that are kind of like, the dogs apparently of the
That's what they actually call them, isn't it?
The dogs, yeah. And so this film was panned by critics, and the New York Times, there's a critic, A.O. Scott. So he criticized the film's director, so Wally, saying that, quote, Mr. Wolodarski has made a film that even a rabid lowbrow like Homer Simpson, or When the Mood Strikes, this critic would find beneath his dignity. To be fair, Mr. Wolodarski did not write the script.
So that was the context we had going into this, is that like man getting hit in the groin by a football was higher
art. I was expecting like something really like American Pie, something that's aged badly, and
we were pleasantly surprised.
Justice for Sorority Boys. It's not
boys.
Great. I'm not gonna say like something like Not Another Teen Movie has aged a lot better. There's still stuff in it, but I don't know. I was actually laughing.
I think the first 20 or 30 minutes are kind of like, this is what we were expecting.
It's predictable. It's a predictable movie of like, the guy that's kind of like the very stereotypically better looking of the guys is going to get with the girl. There's going to be one really kind of conventionally attractive girl in this.
Yeah, it's got loads of those kind of tropes that are kind of dated and distasteful and kind of take away from the overall. message, but I think that the overall message was that, like,
don't treat women badly.
yeah, and the women are the heroes of the story.
And they actually, like, even you're like going, the guys are going to dress up as, the girls, but they're going to be like showing them the ropes and that. And yeah, they kind of like, they all join in on things. And one of the guys just like introduces girls to drugs or to weed and tells them to relax about things. And yeah, there's some sort of like silly stuff. But even there's bits where the girls kind of just gain confidence and fix the things. Now, they didn't need a man, they didn't need other people, but it's kind of more actually, they thought it was actually more like, my fellow kind of girlfriend is giving me a pep talk, and it's kind of more that. So maybe it plays more.
Yeah.
But yeah, Justice for, and we actually watched it the same day we watched Under the Skin. So the one with Scarlett Johansson. So for a lot of feminist kind of teams that day, and I think it's a good double feature.
I thought it was a good double feature.
Yeah.
Well, Under the Skin was a very good movie, but Sorority Boys was also pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. It's like a 3 out of 5.
It's a 3 out of 5, and it's better than American Pie.
I would say anything is better than American Pie.
So that's our mini Sorority Boys review.
Oh yeah, in this in the Simpsons episode.
Wally Wallerdowski, he's an interesting character, and to be honest, we could probably make a podcast all about him.
All about just his adventures with Wes Anderson, and I suppose there's a different journey, a different Odyssey we'll have to go on today.
Different Odyssey, and this one takes us into the context of Homer's.
the Homer's Odyssey.
Oakley dokley.
So let's get started on this Odyssey for Homer's Odyssey then.
Mm-hmm.
This is the episode context, so we're going to cover what was happening around the world at the time that the episode aired.
Yeah, reeling in the years and the Duff Beers.
So this aired in America all the way back in January 21st, 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know about the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, there was a lot of they're on their own dark odyssey.
Oh yeah, a lot going on.
Starting with the fall of the Soviet Union, which brought its own difficulties, I guess.
Yeah, so we had a lot of things like there was Black January in Baku in the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic. I haven't heard that name in years.
It's just Azerbaijan.
And that was a violent crackdown on Azerbaijani nationalism and anti-Soviet sentiment. And that was when Soviet troops killed over 130 protesters who were demonstrating for independence. So
messy time.
Very messy. Just kind of when 1989, 1990, there was still a lot of kind of lines being kind of cut there. And
yeah, the old geopolitics was added again.
Yeah.
And as we know from stuff like the Prague Spring and that, like there's
just a lot going on, yeah.
A lot of people with different opinions in each one. And then unfortunately as well, that wasn't the only one, because there was the Gokadal massacre
in Jammu and Kashmir. That was a region that was controlled by India. And yeah, Indian paramilitary troops opened fire on a group of Kashmiri protesters, so killing between 50 and 100 people. Who knows really how many. So
a lot of brutality all around the world, and then
not a fun day.
And I guess if you're in America, you're watching Homer's Odyssey and probably also checking out the Australian Open, so you're not really aware of what was
and there was
in the East.
Not as violent, but John McEnroe was disqualified from the tournament that day on the 21st for swearing at the umpire and a referee and intimidating a lineswoman and then smashing a racket.
I remember seeing clips of that. I wasn't alive at the time that it was on. I certainly had no cognizance back then in the early 90s, but I can remember seeing clips of it. It was a very famous kind of like clip of him throwing the racket and getting angry. And
yeah, there's a bit where he's just kind of going over and he's like bouncing the ball at the. Yeah. He's just kind of being a bit of a drama queen.
There was a movie made about it actually.
Oh, about that day or
about the.
I think he's had a few freakouts.
It was about John McEnroe's rivalry with who was the other guy? I wouldn't be the biggest tennis fan now, but there was some other, I think he was a German or Swiss dude, and he had a big rivalry with John McEnroe, and they made a movie about it. I'm sure.
Was he called Bjork?
Yes, I think he was. Ooh. Yeah.
Because I think there's actually a Simpson, the Life on the Fast Lane was meant to be a tennis episode, and they were going to call him, I think, Bjork or Bjorg.
Oh, that was it. Yes.
Jacques was meant to be called something like Swedish, and it was meant to be tennis. So I'm just totally guessing that he's called that.
Oh, that's very interesting. So maybe he's going to be based on him.
Maybe.
Homer could have been the John McEnroe Quidgy Bow kind of thing if we want to go back to the last episode. Losing his mind,
big tennis nutball. Yeah, and then on a lighter note, films from around that time, Parenthood was the #1 movie at the UK box office. So that's the one with Steve Martin. Steve Martin being in yet another movie where I'm a dad and my family, wow.
Look at my big family.
Look
I'm
at
Steve Martin.
I don't believe in birth control. I don't know. And then Born on the 4th of July was #1 at the USA box office. So
we're keeping those patriotic.
God bless those veterans.
Keeping the patriotic vibes going.
That's it. And then you have Hanging Tough by New Kids on the Block or New Kids on the Block. Yeah, that was the Irish and UK #1 song. So we actually had the same.
So does that depend on where you listen to it? It's New Kids on the Block in the UK and then New Kids on the Block.
We have that version. We have New Kids on the Blarney or something. And yeah, so that was just kind of the context, the reeling in the years and Duff Beers from around that time.
A busy day. Busy day,
an Odyssey in itself.
An Odyssey in itself.
Ay, caramba!
So just a heads up before we get into the episode that it does contain themes of suicide. So for any listeners who might be affected by that, we'd recommend that you don't listen.
Just a content warning there.
But getting into the episode then, the chalkboard gag of the intro is, I will not skateboard in the halls. Whoa. Bart, calm down, you edgy devil.
Tony Hawk in the making.
Yeah, that was the prime Tony Hawk era.
And the couch gag is the family running onto the couch and it collapses.
I think we'll get a lot of them kind of basic ones in
Very
this season.
basic. If you're not popping out of the sofa, it's just you falling off the sofa.
I mean, so far in, we're actually lucky to be getting an intro at all.
Yeah.
A proper intro.
Here's us fussy individuals.
So the episode starts at Mrs. Krabappel is taking Bart and his class on a field trip to the nuclear power plant.
To Springfield nuclear power plant, and Bart goes to find a seat, and he's bummed out to see that the only one left is next to Wendell.
Wendell's all kind of pale and queasy.
This very emaciated looking child who's always on the verge of vomiting, and he pukes on every bus ride apparently.
I think that's your worst nightmare, Duffy
My
Beer.
worst. I vomited on coming back from college one time. Person sitting behind me and lovely smell of breakfast roll.
It's a good night out for the person behind you, though.
Yeah, not for me.
Not for you.
I can never chicken breakfast bap ever again. The smell, the horrors.
And the chicken breakfast bap is so
It was
good.
Wendell.
That's you. So you got sitting in front of Wendell that time. Bart was sitting beside him.
Projectile vomited in my hair. So yeah, and then Miss Krabappel warns Bart, if he misbehaves, he'll have to sing in front of the class at the front of the bus, which is very random. You shouldn't be doing that. That's very dangerous. A child should be sitting down at all times on the bus.
Seatbelt in.
Yeah.
Those are the buses I went on, Aoife. The buses I was on for school trips, I think a wheel came off one of them in the middle of the drive.
There's a kid hanging off one of the doors. And we see Sherry and Terry. I don't know if this is their first introduction. I don't think they were in the shorts at all.
No, they weren't.
I think this is their first.
This is the school introduction kind of,
I think
isn't it?
basically this is our first time we see even Osho.
Yeah.
Osho Man based on Wally.
Yeah, Mr. Wolodarski.
Yeah, and so Sherry and Terry, they want to get Bart in trouble, and I have a feeling they were going to be bigger characters in The Simpsons. Kind of more like, they're going to be any kind of
they were going to
Bart's enemy.
Yeah, start plots where Bart maybe gets into trouble or something, and evil twin.
They're like the goody two shoes.
But the kind of evil twin is a trope, isn't it? Like something creepy about twins.
Yeah. I don't even think there's a way to tell which one's the evil one with Terry and Sherry. They both look completely similar.
Yeah, they're both the same.
They're just the same person. So yeah, they get Bart in trouble, and Bart has to sing this old American folk song, John Henry Was a Steel Driving Man. That's about an African American freedman who built railroads across the West Virginia mountains I don't think it's really more of an American folk song, I think.
Oh, there's that thing in American schools then where they like would get kids to sing if they were being bold, or
They get the spoon here.
they get the wooden spoon in the
Wooden
back of
spoon.
the legs.
But the bus finally arrives at the power plant, and Bart congratulates Wendell by giving him a big pat on the back. It's like, you haven't gone sick, buddy, well done. And which results in Wendell puking anyway. And it is the most disgusting noise. I'm surprised they got away with having this. Like, you don't see him get sick, you just hear the noise and all the kids rushing off the bus in horror.
Which is worse for you, Duffy Beer? Is it like the visuals of the puke, or is it the noise?
A combination. The noise is pretty, like, it's a visceral kind of sound, isn't it? Wendell, it's like,
Oh.
Ian Beale in EastEnders getting sick. And it reminds me actually of Jacob Tutu. Remember this Canadian cartoon? And it had lovely animation, kind of creepy, kind of like series of unfortunate events kind of style. Really, I like the animation, but it just was very detailed then. And there was I remember vividly a scene where they had the bus and it was overflowing with sick. This child just getting vomiting, and the sick was literally flowing out, and
it's like a tin of sick.
it was like it was just like a tsunami coming out of the school door, the bus door. And I remember just as a child watching this going to school, and I was just like, horrific.
I'll never remind me to never show you the video then of this. Is like this fish in Sweden, and it's the stinkiest fish ever. And there's a video of this guy trying to eat it, and as soon as he opened the tin, he started throwing up everywhere. So he was Wendell, but
yeah, I actually do have a sick phobia. Well, I'm self-diagnosed. I'm just a big baby.
Pretty common thing though that sick makes other people sick. So
yeah,
poor Wendell probably started it.
Oh, Wendell. And I think that's like Wendell's only real thing. He's just a sickly, like, I know he gets sick in the bouncy castle as well. He's just such a liability. Or was that?
That's why he's always pale, isn't it though?
Yeah.
It's because he always looks like he's going to throw up.
Yeah. And there was so the kids are at the power plant. Enough about my sick like flashbacks.
Once they cleaned up after Wendell throws up all over them, they get taken on a tour, don't they?
And it's the tour is given by a very unusually tanned Mr. Smithers, Waylon Smithers. In this case, Black Smithers. So this is like a very famous thing about Homer's Odyssey, just a animation error apparently. So Dash Smithers, it's Smithers' kind of first introduction, I think.
Yeah. And
he's kind of very shall we say, just a person of color maybe in this episode, and it's his first visual appearance, and he was mistakenly animated with the wrong color and was made an African American by Georgie Pelouse, the same person who chose to make The Simpsons yellow. And the color stylist, she was the color stylist, but producer David Silverman, he claimed Smithers was always intended to be yellow, apparently.
So he was never going to be.
There's a lot of back and forth of like, oh no, Smithers was meant to be black, and there's just a lot of varying kind of stories.
Is this his only appearance when he is black, Smithers?
This is, yeah. So and then there's actually this really crappy video of like TMZ, like a reporter for TMZ, going over to Matt Groening and kind of like, oh, why was Smithers black? You should have kept him black. Oh, and he's going over to Matt Groening. Matt Groening's like, oh, it was just a mistake. That's all. He's like literally coming out of an airport tired, and he's like, oh no, it was a mistake. And they're like, him being black was a mistake? What? And it's just obviously they're trying to get a soundbite.
Good old TMZ journalism.
Just trying to get a soundbite of like, no, Smithers was never meant to be black because we didn't want him black, and then or something like that. It was meant. But
I think it's one of those things though, do you know, like Barney has blonde hair in season 1 and the colours weren't finalised and there's people making
They
mistakes,
probably didn't think that Smithers even was going to be like a character. Like he probably, even if he was a once-off character, it doesn't matter. It's just, but then down the line, I think because he was meant to be a sycophant for Mr. Burns, and then people were saying maybe, I know there was like, oh,
that wouldn't have been a great look.
Yeah, they couldn't have had like, oh, maybe kind of very like, obsequious kind of black man.
Subservient,
And then later, down the line, there's also stories of like, was Smithers always gay from the beginning, or was he just sort of like in love with Mr. Burns? And people are like, oh, he can't be black and gay. So there's so many different reports of different people, of different, like, say, David Silverman, and even I think the writers for this episode, just things weren't set in stone like at this time. So I would not take it with any.
Season 1 is up. Everything's up for grabs.
Everything, yeah. Nothing's
If you want to change something, go for it.
Nothing's really canon. It's fine.
I think so, yeah.
And so anyway, once inside the plant, Black Smithers shows a film on nuclear energy, which it stars the animation mascot Smiling Joe Fission.
The Smiling Joe fishing bit is really cool.
Yeah.
And the commentators actually said that they got the film reel of the Smiling Joe fishing cartoon, and they had the cells dragged across a cement floor to scratch it up, so that it had that old educational
old-timey,
movie.
Yeah, it looks really grainy
and well used and stuff. But it's a cool little sequence. It's probably my favourite sequence in the episode. It's Smiling Joe fishing.
It's actually a very cute and quaint part of the episode, and yeah, it just, you could watch it just totally. Again, it doesn't really feel like you could watch it out of context, really.
Yeah, and he's a character who you get the impression that they had ideas from to maybe come back like once a season or something.
Yeah, is he the mascot for the isotopes in that?
I could be. They've got a little kind of isotope character as well, don't they?
It's like a character. Yeah, he's just very underutilized, really. I think I've seen like Smiling Joe Vision and like Fallout kind of crossover art.
Oh, and Fallout video game crossover art.
And it's actually there's another animation there. God, we're only like 2 seconds in, and we already have Smithers, and but there's a scene where Terry and Sherry and they're walking along talking to Bart, and then one of the girls' heads is just floating. They just seem to color in their hair and their body just merge into one. Spooky head.
Floating head.
Ooh, the nuclear plant is haunted.
She already mutated just going on the
yeah, it's like the radiation.
Her body's gone invisible.
This is a new Chernobyl here. And then we have another first
debut.
Yeah. Blinky. Yay, the tree-eyed fish. He makes a brief cameo in the episode. He, like, it's literally just sort of like it just cuts to a scene of him swimming along or so, and he doesn't really serve any real. That'll be more in kind of 2 cars in every garage episode.
Yeah, we're big fans of Blinky the fish, as you know, from the mascot Blinky Joyce.
Blinky Joyce.
And we also got like cool pins of Blinky the fish from. There's a really cool pin website called Deadly.ie if anyone's interested in Simpsons.
Yeah, they're an Irish. I think they're Dublin
based,
and they have very cool. Yeah, it's all kind of Irish. They have a lot of Simpsons.
But they tie the Simpsons in with like Irish mythology or
Celtic.
something.
I have a very cool, like, the snowball, but it's like the Book of Kells.
And I've got the Blinky the fish, but he's like tied in with like that's kind of Irish symbols and stuff.
Yeah, it's very cool. And
Blinky though had more success than Smiling Joe Fishing.
Yeah,
he became more of a mascot for the series, and he made other appearances later on then, didn't he?
Yeah, like he's like a little Easter egg that pops up a lot more.
But it's 2 cool designs that were just kind of like used as cameos in this.
Yeah, like it's very, like, now this episode, it was the first episode that was written. The script for this was actually like the first. It just was the 3rd episode then. So there's a lot of kind of like very ambitious kind of characters and everything coming up in this episode.
I think they're so impressive, like from a design perspective, because you could imagine them as little characters in their own shows and they'd be the star of it, and in the Simpsons they're just kind of like get a couple of seconds.
Yeah, I do feel like Smiling Joe Vision could have definitely popped up a lot more. Yeah, and Blinky
as a kind of little itchy and scratchy style things or something.
Yeah, or I think because they had more like Troy McClure coming up for like educational videos.
Yeah,
So
he probably replaced.
he kind of became a bit redundant, really, of like, unless we're just having a specifically nuclear kind of PSA.
Yeah.
And even I think if they did, they'd be like Troy McClure. Maybe in newer episodes, unfortunately, with Phil Hartman gone and that.
Maybe they brought
Maybe
them
they
out of retirement, yeah. But as far as we're concerned, like up to season 12 or something, as far as our
if it
knowledge
went
goes.
past season 15, say, I was like, I would have absolutely no idea what's happening.
And well, they're on the third end as well. Poor Homer is driving along, isn't
Yeah,
he?
and-
He's not. He doesn't have his usual job. He's
No,
just
so
kind of a floor general operative kind of dude, isn't he?
kind of, and he's there in one of those little cool go-karts.
Yeah.
And he's there eating a donut. He makes a joke. He's like, I can't tell the difference between these donuts and yesterday's donuts or something, He kind of hinted being a bit lazy at his job, but he's all excited because he knows Bart has a school trip that day. And he's like, oh, I'm keeping an eye out for the boy. And,
Yeah.
and he's so excited then. He sees Bart and he's like, hey, boy, hey. And then crashes his little electric cart into a radioactive pipe.
Oh yeah.
And it's like kind of near emergency levels and everything is...
Bart's all embarrassed.
Bart's embarrassed. So what happens is this manager of some sort or supervisor.
Sherry and Terry's dad.
Yeah,
isn't he?
Sherry and Terry. He's like a different colour from Sherry and Terry.
I think you should get the onto Dr. Phil about
Dr.
that.
Phil, Jeremy Kyle DNA test there. So he is like, that's it, Simpson, you're fired. And then he's like, oh, hi, girls. And they're like, hi, Daddy. And Bart's just mortified.
Hiding behind the
Yeah,
railing.
it's a very strange kind of, the whole thing is from Bart's point of view of like the school trip and everything. And, and then it cuts to, you think, Homer, you'd be worried about your father being hurt, but instead he's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. And then it just cuts to Homer being sad. So now, then the episode shifts completely from Bart's perspective to Homer's perspective completely.
Goes from a Bart episode to a homie episode.
A homie episode.
Homie.
Oh, homie on the range. So then, so Homer, has lost his job suddenly. From Bart going on a school trip is now Homer looking for a new job.
Yeah, so Bart waving at him has caused him to crash, and
Bart existing
him.
has ruined Homer's life. So Homer's looking for jobs, and after a long day of doors slamming in his face and no new job prospects, he goes to Moe's Tavern.
You gotta drown your sorrows.
Drown your sorrows, even though sorrows can swim.
Yeah.
And Homer's drinking a beer, and then the phone rings, and Moe answers it. And this is Bart's first prank call.
The first call.
And this one being IP Freely.
A classic one.
Classic.
A classic.
Yeah, so these are based on the Chew Bar prank calls, which they were a series of prank calls made in the 1970s. In this, there was this Chew Bar in New Jersey City, and which a couple of guys would just ask the owner, Red, and speak to just various non-existing humans.
Like IP Freely or something.
IP Freely, and it'd be...
Red would be like, oh, I'll get you.
I'll get you, son of a...
I'll kill you and your mother.
you don't even... And it's like, people be like, yeah, is Stu there? He's like, what? Who's Stu what? Pid? Stupid. Oh, you son of a...
I'll kill you.
You don't even have
I got my shotgun here.
He's like, let me show you. Come. And he's like the guy that plays the security. His voice is like his the actor, in Pulp
From
Fiction.
Reservoir Dogs.
Oh yeah, Reservoir Dogs.
The head guy in Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, that gravelly.
Ugh.
Just sandpaper on his throat the whole time.
You gotta respect the waitresses in the
waitresses. You gotta tip the waitresses. And so these tapes, these Tube Bar tapes, they were circulated widely on the cassette tapes back. So people just trade these around, like, oh, have you heard this guy?
This is pre-internet as well.
Pre-internet,
so it'd be the
pre-viral.
70s, someone would come into school with a cassette tape of it and it'd be like, oh, I got the latest Tube Bar.
And Matt Groening, he was apparently a fan of these, and I don't know, apparently this was inspiration for the Moe prank calls. Apparently. apparently.
IP freely.
IP freely being, yeah. So Homer is depressed and Mo won't even give him a free drink because he's just like, oh, Mo, I've got no money left. And, he's like, can you spare me one? Put it on my tab. And Mo's like, no. And Homer's like, why? And it's like, because I don't think you're going to get a job to pay me back.
Mo doesn't even have faith in him to
No. It's
give,
like, well, we're
pay
still
him back
friends,
for one
right?
free beer.
And so then Homer is, again, very depressed. Bit of foreshadowing there. And he lies on the couch and the kids are trying to cheer him up and he doesn't respond. He's kind of just paralyzed in depression.
The family's so supportive of him.
Very supportive. They're like, oh, Homer, like Mo's there.
Even
not
Bart.
Mo, Mo's not. Marge is there, like really kind of like, oh, I think you'll get a new job, Homer. And they're looking up jobs in the paper and yeah, there's so Homer's lying on the couch and I find there's a really distracting background like animation in this scene. There's like, say there's a painting of Marge gasping in one photo frame and then there's another photo frame for her hair. And
that was quite innovative though, thinking it was like her hair's so big so we get the two photos, chop it up and put it into two frames.
And they do actually, in the Raven in the Treehouse of Horror bit and when she's Lenore and they kind of, but it's played as a proper sight gag there, whereas this is just a strange kind of like background thing that you're just like, oh, like the pictures in the early season 1 are just so distracting.
That's the trippiness, isn't it, of the classic Chupo animation kind of. It's very like Rugrats where it's like weirdness. It's like the bit where it shows the ceiling in this episode 2 and the fire alarms there, but it's a weird pink ceiling that's like different shades. And
this one, where Homer's like lying on the couch and the kids, it's a funny angle of the kids like looking down at Homer and you can see the smoke alarm and the smoke alarm, like there's a little light on it. It's so cluttered, just a lot of stuff, very cluttered, I find.
Yeah, weird angles as well.
Yeah, just
reminds me a lot of Rugrats actually.
Except Rugrats just had that. It just, I know we're saying this with so much kind of like there's a retrospect on it kind of, but it suited Rugrats but just didn't suit the Simpsons.
No, and this was before Rugrats, so they obviously ironed out all the problems and stuff.
Yeah, Rugrats, it's aesthetic.
Rugrats is good. Yeah, Rugrats is very good.
Yeah, and so Homer again is lying on the sofa, and then he later sees like a commercial, and it's a Duff Beer ad.
Duff, the beer that makes the days fly by.
It's me, Duffy Beer.
Duffy Beer, and the podcaster who makes the days fly by.
And so he's there, and we kind of get early hints of Homer's alcoholism here, because Homer's like, yes, beer will solve my problems, and he wanders into the kitchen, searches the fridge for a beer, and he can't find anything. There's like a cake of like the kids had for like, don't give up, Dad, we love you, or something. It's
kind of like, oh well, that's not beer.
And he just, I need not be so angry. It's just like this really. I'm scared of him.
It's like the most supportive I think that we ever see Bart and Lisa towards Homer's like.
They're just like, please, Dad, don't give up. And what does he do? So he goes and he wants his beer. He goes up and he smashes Bart's piggy bank, and to scrounge up some cash. And of course, there's nothing there. He's like, I know if even for
only
one
couple of cents. What have I come to?
It's not even worth
my
this.
Boy's piggy bank.
And realizing how low he has sunk and feeling like a total failure, a total loser, he goes and writes a suicide note.
Yeah, so he's like, Robin Bart has pushed him to the edge.
Yes. And
it's time to crack out the suicide boulder.
It's like the suicide boulder. Luckily, I've kept one in the shed.
Yeah.
And but he's there. He writes a suicide note. He's like, "Oh, I can only leave you with words my father gave me," and it's basically like, "Never give up," which doesn't sound like Abe.
It doesn't sound like Abe at all.
No, Abe's like, if you meet a stranger on the street, if he offers you a lift, you take it.
Take it. Or I think there's actually a quote from Abe in a later episode in season 2 where his advice to Homer is like, it's something like, oh, yeah, just never try and amount to anything.
Never try. It's like, that's the word. And you're ugly as a mule.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Homer's like, right, get me trusty boulder. I'm going off to jump off a bridge. And like, fair. I know. So this episode, I think, was the script again. It was written first. So
Yeah, like this is production-wise, this is the first Simpson episode.
First one that was finished. So fair enough, kind of like a sitcom where the father attempts suicide.
It was the 80s as well.
Yeah.
By the time this was written, it was probably like 89, I'd say.
Yeah. And so then Lisa discovers Homer's suicide note, and Homer's there walking along the street off, and it's like there's an old couple there, like, oh,
Looks like Mr. Simpson is going to kill himself.
oh, I know, maybe he's taking his pet boulder out for a walk.
Yeah.
And Homer's dragging this thing, and meanwhile the family
There's another joke actually where he's like going to leave the garden and the fence is creaking.
Oh yeah, it's squeaky.
So he goes and gets the oil to...
Yeah.
It's a lot of kind of random little
jokes that just you kind of miss, really.
They remind me a lot of the shorts that we watched.
Yeah, it's that kind of hokey jokes, hokey jokey, and yeah, like that's so Homer's going to commit suicide, right? He's going to the bridge. Did he specify in the note that he was going to this bridge?
I don't think he did, no.
I want to see that note, because as far as we knew, it was just like, oh, I love you, family, and goodbye, Homer J. Simpson. And so that's happening.
Bart wakes up in the middle of the night.
And he's like, I've been robbed because my piggy bank has been taken, like as if he got up in the middle of the night to check
his piggy bank.
And then Lisa's like, oh, look what I found. And it's a note from Homer. It's the suicide note. And the family like, oh, and so
they rush to save him.
They rush to save him. But I like, how do they know he's gone? And it doesn't really say he's going to kill himself in the note. It's just a very ominous kind of like, goodbye world. Goodbye. But he could be out in the car gassing himself or something. Oh, yeah. I don't know. I just wouldn't. My first thing would be like, oh, he's going. Maybe that's the suicide bridge in Springfield. That's the go-to.
But doesn't he see another boulder there?
Yeah, he sees another boulder. So yeah, there's a joke there where it's like a blink and you miss it kind of joke. And he's dragged this big giant boulder the whole way up the town. And then there's another boulder right there, just conveniently. And he's like, oh, well, live and learn. And so just as he's about to jump in the water below, Marge and the kids, they are running. They're like shouting Homer. They're like, oh, Homer. And next thing, they're nearly run over by a speeding truck. And Homer then, with the strength, even despite that big heavy boulder, managed to
use his agility
and just like pulls them out of the way. And so this is again the big giant shift. So we've gone from like Bart on a school trip to Homer losing his job, trying to look for a job, to Homer then being depressed, going to kill himself. And now suddenly he's filled with a reason to live. And
he gets an epiphany, doesn't he?
And he gets an epiphany that he's going to ask for a stop sign to be pushed at this intersection. And, which doesn't solve the issue of him finding a job. But this is now shifting completely into another story.
Yeah, so he gets the epiphany, to put stop signs at the intersection.
Yeah.
And then his family supports him in going to the council then.
The council. And so now we have a third act of Homer. Yeah, he petitions the city council, and this now starts a whole new story of Homer embarking on a public safety crusade that involves like putting speed bumps around the place and warning signs.
Safety signs for everything.
Safety signs. I actually, when he's at the town meeting, there's a funny thing of Bart. So Police Chief Wiggum is kind of like, oh, we've got this graffiti artist going around, El Barto. And, it's kind of the first, I think it's another first really, where there's the first introduction of El Barto.
El Barto.
Which doesn't really come up then, El Barto.
No, and it's a good joke, actually. It's good.
I think El Barto, as far as I remember, like, he was more, that was used more in the comics.
Yeah.
I think El Barto, kind of Bart really did kind of go into more kind of little low crime kind of things.
There's a lot of kind of ideas in this early seasons that they're...
I think El Barto, the last time I think El Barto comes up is like when he's writing down Homer's like El Homo.
Yeah.
And that's like in like season 13 or something. But
the Chief Wiggum sends the drawing of him around, doesn't he?
Yeah. And the person that passes the picture of El Barto so they're sitting in a row, and this stranger hands it to Lisa. And if you see this guy, this is another really random animation kind of error I find, or just really distracting animation. It's just this hideously ugly, spiky haired.
Springfield has some weird citizens in this episode. I don't know, did the clean up the water from the power plant after this or
Blinky,
something?
everybody's coming at Blinky for being ugly, and meanwhile you got these human.
To make Hans Moleman look like he is actually 31 years old.
Yes, I can understand why he's only 31. Yeah, they're sitting next to this guy, big teeth, big ears. He looks like one of those guys, people that look like things.
There's a dude in the background with a giant forehead as well, and then a real long-faced woman just behind the
and
ugly
Jasper.
Jasper's there as well.
Jasper's the most normal looking. So yeah, just so.
But that guy is particularly
ugly. Just
he's hideous.
So yeah. Anyway, so tangent. So Homer is now a safety crusader. So
and we see signs sprouting up all around Springfield.
Yeah. And he's like, if you think I'm going to stop at that stop sign, you got me wrong. And next thing it just cuts to a load of signs up everywhere. No, it cuts to like a montage of like newspapers of like, oh, Homer puts up another sign. Homer puts up another sign. Okay,
this
Homer.
Guy done yet?
Yeah. And so then later on, the town, has been covered with these stop signs. But Homer feels like he can still do more. I can save more. So he plans to take on the nuclear power plant. An attempt to make it safer.
The most dangerous thing in the town, he says.
And so it just cuts to the next day, a big, large cheering crowd.
He's managed to amass a really large protest.
Homer has a cult following.
Yeah.
He's a cult. And he's staging a protest about the lack of safety at the power plant. And the crowd, it's just another ugly. The crowd scene at the plant features just so many bizarre character designs.
These people were all affected by the nuclear power plant.
Maybe this is why they are protesting. It's like, right. So if you see a picture, there's like conjoined twins. There's these like sideways guys. Their heads are
the sideways head guys.
They're looking up at the sky, and their heads are just spiked together like jigsaw pieces. There's a happy elf character. Like literally one of the happy elves that like Lisa watches. There's a very shouty Easter Island head dude.
He looks like he's going to eat Bart.
He looks like, so the only people that are moving this crowd scene are like, I think Marge and Lisa and Bart. And he's just this big roar.
Right behind Bart.
Giant head. Like his head is the size of like Marge's hair and head.
There's so many different like animation styles in this one scene.
Yeah, it's like a work of art. It's beautiful. But like, there's like a guy as well with a superhero mask, like the Zorro guy, just smirking. It's just, and then everyone else is just like kind of brown and yellow eggs in the background. And I know crowd shots are very hard to draw. Like it's not a dig at the animators, but it's just such a first draft kind of thing.
Oh yeah, it's just jarring. Like it's
jarring, and then you even have like
it's a shot though. I'm glad that we have, because it is very interesting.
It's like a Where's Wally of just hideous characters, and I like even Homer's standing on a car, and he's there kind of just making a speech, and Smithers is there, Black Smithers, and these two giant bodyguards who look like,
you said they look like
Mayor Quimby. Yeah, there's one guy who just looks like Mayor Quimby, but he's
Buff Mayor Quimby.
Buff Mayor Quimby. Hello town.
There will be no protest in this town.
There will be no protest. But so then the rally is noticed by C. Montgomery Burns. So,
who was not voiced by Harry Shearer.
Yeah, it's very
surprisingly.
Oh my goodness! It's just, so this is just obviously the art of voice acting. So, Mr. Burns was originally voiced by Christopher Collins, who was the voice. He did a lot of kind of 80s cartoons, Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe, which I've never seen.
I think that was more of an American thing. We got Action Man.
But but he was also in the Transformers cartoon. So Starscream was the one that sounded really
Was he?
I can't do his voice.
I just remember there was the Frog Baddie, and Starscream one of them.
Oh, I'm not a Transformers fan.
I used to watch when I was younger, but I just remember.
Oh, you're a fake fan.
A fake Transformers fan.
Oh.
And I haven't watched the Michael Bay ones at all. So.
Oh, with Shia LaBeouf.
Shia
Shia
LaBeouf.
Surprise. But yeah, he's done voice work actually.
So he's like an 80s American cartoon legend.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I wonder was he in kind of like, the original My Little Ponies?
Oh yeah. Care Bears maybe.
Care Bears maybe.
It's stunning though that it's not Harry Shearer, because Harry Shearer just completely emulated this guy's voice. Like,
it's so because Mr. Burns, right? So just knowing from Ted Cruz, the Zodiac Killer,
yeah.
there was a thing of like him trying to do voices, the Simpson voices, and you're like, obviously they're terrible, but I wouldn't be able to do a Mr. Burns impression.
No,
I wouldn't be.
I don't think so.
No, I don't.
Excellent.
But it's obviously me doing an impression. But this guy is just I'm so impressed by Harry Shearer.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he also Christopher Collins voiced Mo as well before Hank Azaria.
Another impressive take.
Yeah. I actually don't know, did he do Mo in this episode? I think he recorded.
We looked it up, didn't we? And there's
I think he recorded, but I don't think I think his
Harry used Hank Azaria.
I think his the Mr. Burns was definitely used. But I don't know about Moe's. Maybe in the first episode, the Christmas episode.
That could have been it, yeah.
Yeah, I think he left. I think he was kind of, I'm not going to say fired, but I think they just went with like Hank Azaria.
Yeah.
Hank Azaria said in an interview that he got the part because your man apparently wasn't very popular.
Oh, he was.
He was like extremely talented, Christopher Collins, but apparently he was just very difficult to work with.
Yeah, they couldn't get on with him.
So
the story at this point then takes some weird turns, doesn't it? Where
so we're in another thing. It's okay. Yeah. It's like trying to keep with the story is very difficult.
Mr. Burns notices the rally against the power plant and he wants Homer brought up to his office. And this is the first time, isn't it? It's kind of like, who's that?
Who's that?
And Simpson, eh?
Simpson, eh? Bring him to my office.
Which just becomes a running joke, obviously, then throughout the show.
I don't think he'll ever remember Homer's name again.
No.
But Mr. Burns, calls him up to the office and he negotiates with Homer, offers him a new job as safety inspector. And
he has a little, he gives Homer 3 seconds to think about it.
Yeah, he literally puts like a little time thing down.
And then Homer's like, I'll take it.
Sure, okay. So, Homer is torn between his principles and his livelihood. And then he's like, oh, whatever. But so this bit is weird because he goes, okay, I'll take the job. Mr. Burns is like, okay. So first thing you need to do is go tell that crowd to go away. And Homer goes out to the crowd and, he goes out to the crowd and then he's like, oh, I can't take this job. I can't with my principles.
Because he looks down at the crowd and he gets all kind of tearful and emotional and he's like, oh, I need to stand for something. And then he marches back in and tells Mr. Burns, I'm not taking it. And then he's there. I think he does say something like, I'm going to keep campaigning. And goes, although I suppose I would have less time to campaign if you just gave me the job anyway. Mr. Burns goes, so you're not as dumb as you look, eh? You've got the job.
You've got the job. Now get to work. So then Homer goes out and tells him anyway that he's got the job. It's just such a redundant scene. So
just to recap on that is Mr. Burns has Homer taken up to his office. He offers him a job as a safety instructor.
Mm-hmm. He has it.
Homer thinks about it, declines the job. No, Homer thinks about it, accepts the job, goes out to tell the crowd that he's taken the job, but then he looks down at them and he's like, oh, I can't let this crowd down. So he goes back into Mr. Burns and says, I'm not taking the job, but maybe I will take it. And then Mr. Burns says, you've got the job, despite not really being in a position to.
Mr. Burns is just like, here, there's no tension at all of Homer versus. So we'll see again. I know later on in the show we'll see, say, the union episode, the dental plan.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for that.
Yeah, and it's such a brilliant episode. But that's where Homer is negotiating with Mr. Burns. That whole episode is based on this dynamic between Mr. Burns and Homer campaigning for the dental plan, say. And it's just such a quick scene in this episode. So this episode just has gone from, again, a school trip to a job search thing to then Homer leading the campaign and arguing with Mr. Burns.
It's just so redundant, though, how he goes back into Mr. Burns and then gets re-offered the job and then goes back out to tell them anyway he's taking the job.
Yeah, so it could have cut this whole, this scene, this whole thing of Homer versus Burns only takes up, I'd say, 2 minutes of the actual episode. And even then, a good minute
feels
of
too
it,
long.
it's like so pointless. So like, because Homer then goes back out. He's out on the balcony basically of the building, and he announces to everyone his new job, and the crowd's cheering, and Homer does a stupid little dance, and then on the ledge and falls. And the crowd then catches him and carry him on his shoulders, chanting his name, and it ends. It just ends on that.
Why are they chanting for him though?
They're
I
like,
thought
"Homer,
that they
Homer."
thought that they were going to be upset if he takes the job.
Yeah, but it's
It just wraps up. These season 1 episodes, I find a lot of them wrap up just so weirdly and
it's
conveniently.
It's obviously such a cheesy ending, but it's just like obviously like there's such an opportunity there for so many jokes of like even Homer falling off the ledge. And like a more classic episode was to have something like, Homer falling into the crowd, like, well, anyway, let's go.
This guy's so useless or
This
something.
guy's useless.
And then Marge and Bart and that come over to him and they're like, oh, whoa, Homer, you really screwed up there.
It's like, Homer, you do know, like, that nuclear plant, or it would just have something of like Homer probably being very injured, or like the toxic fumes are like causing them to cough, and they're like, maybe I should have campaigned more.
Yeah.
There's just potential for so much more, but of course the episode just ends on a just stupidly cheesy, like he's there, everything's just too sincere of him giving this speech. It's like, oh, I just want to thank you all, and the crowd are just so like just admire Homer so much.
I wonder how much James L. Brooks had to do with that, because he was big into sitcoms that would have been very feel good and would have had lots of endings like that.
Yeah, ending on something of kind of like inspiring, or
where the kind of the protagonist of the show is always kind of like, it's not as much say self-deprecating humor as like the later Simpsons gets very cynical, which is
we'll see a lot kind of like, especially season 1, season 2 even. There's a few crap endings in that we'll get to.
Oh, there's the mother of all the crap.
Mother of which one is it? The Bart gets hit by a car.
Yeah.
Dash ending.
Save that rant for then, Duffy Beer.
So basically Homer's Odyssey has ended on such a smarmy, sentimental, pointless, just the whole ending, it just has no, just it's not
satisfying.
It's not earned.
Yeah.
Nothing's earned.
And let's see then what ranking it earns. Then
I think so. Ho-ho.
Worst episode ever.
So it's time to get into the ranking of Homer's Odyssey, or maybe the ranting.
The ranting.
The ranting of Homer's Odyssey may be a spoiler, but I think this one could be going into the dud.
This could be a harsh one.
Could be the harshest one yet. Or maybe for a while. Let's find out though. So just for anybody who is new and who hasn't listened to any other episodes of the podcast, we have a ranking system that Duffy Beer came up with, and this ranks 3 or 4 categories out of 3. So the first category is emotion. So
if it's say a tearjerker, moments that kind of pull at the old heartstrings, just little sweet moments or sentimental moments.
And of course, The Simpsons is a comedy show, so we thought that the laughs wouldn't be an emotion; they'd be in their own category, which is the next category. Laughs. How much?
Obvious.
How much did it make you laugh? Did you have a consistent smile on your face watching it? Even like there's some episodes that you maybe don't laugh out loud, but you get a lot of chuckles, and they all add up and make a good one. The one after that is lines, but that's kind of more for lines and memorability, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be a quote, it could be a moment that's just funny. It's just, or something that just makes the episode stand out a wee bit of kind of like, oh yeah. Huh.
Yeah, remember that bit?
Remember that bit?
So obviously, like ones like Dental Plan or something will come up in that.
Very iconic, yeah.
And then the final category is story. So how well does it flow within a 3-act structure? How consistent are the characters? Basically, yeah.
Just good writing.
How engaging is it? Yeah, the good writing, yeah. So out of those categories, emotion, laughs, lines, and story, we give it a score out of 3.
Because that's a only how high I can count.
Oh,
I didn't finish primary school.
you said you did scrape by math stuff.
I did.
So then we give an overall score out of 12, which is obviously the sum total of all the categories. And then we put it into our tier list system. So
we have a giant chalkboard in behind us, and we're writing all the formulas down, and we're like, yes, this episode is decided.
yeah, this makes sense.
This makes sense.
So the tier list is the bottom tier is the dud.
The dud.
Which would be for the lowest ranked episodes. The next tier up from that is craptacular. So they're not quite the dud, but they're not great.
It's not great. It's kind of still, it's fine, but you're kind of like, oh, it's not, yeah, it's not going to stand out or anything.
Just up from that then is for fine episodes.
Which is Oakley Dokley.
Oakley Dokley. We could use Cromulent for that as well, but I guess since we're called the Cromulent Craic Show.
We don't want to overdose on Cromulent.
No, too much Cromulent is, I was going to say Cromulence, but that sounds disgusting. And then when we're talking about really good episodes, the next category up from Oakley Dokley is chock full of heady goodness.
Yes.
And then for the best ever Simpsons episodes, they are amazing, or
groin-grabbingly transcendent.
Groin-grabbingly transcendent. So we've yet to get a groin-grabbingly transcendent episode, don't we?
Yeah, I think so far we have The Simpsons roasting on open fire. That was a chock full of heady goodness, and so was Bart the Genius, chock full of heady goodness.
Well, two classics.
Yeah, and they might not be maybe someone's like favorite episode. It's more, but I think they're very good.
I think so.
Yeah.
So let's get into ranking Homer's Odyssey then. Or ranting Homer's Odyssey. What do you think, Duffy Beer? Starting with emotion.
Emotion.
Did this episode make you cry? Did it tug at the old heartstrings?
No, it's
Homer being sad.
Homer being sad. Yeah, you think there is a moment where I am sad for Homer, where he loses his job, say, but the episode, so Homer in this episode goes to commit suicide, and it's a very obviously heavy kind of theme, really, and it's just terribly handled, terribly, really. It's going for kind of dark comedy, I would kind of think, but the tone is just all over the place. So,
I mean, that's the thing as well, is I think that when you see Bart on the bus at the start of the episode, like the last thing you'd expect is that Homer's about to throw himself over a bridge, then a couple of minutes later.
It's like, so when Homer's going to commit suicide, it's very dramatic, that whole scene of him and the family are running around. He leaves the suicide note and poor Lisa finds it, which would be so traumatic, of like, oh, I found my father's suicide note. And it's just the way it's handled, of even like, I know there's an odd joke in between of him, oh, there's Homer taking his pet boulder out for a walk,
the old couple say that,
yeah, and even him just sort of, there's the boulder he finds at the bridge, and he's like, oh, well, live and learn. But the jokes are they're just not funny jokes, really. They're just too quick, and the timing is just off, that they don't stand out as jokes.
There's the one as well where he is walking out with the boulder, and then he comes back to put the oil on the fence. And I think that would have been like funnier if he was a character that was really particular at things, but that just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It makes sense as a joke, like, but
yeah, it's like we understand all these are jokes. It's just that they're just not funny. It's just a different context, maybe.
But that, we get into that in the last section then.
And it just, again, his suicide comes out of nowhere in this episode, and we've seen Homer go to commit suicide in other episodes done for laughs, and it's funny because just in the sort of, the way it is, the tone of that episode. So say there's the Trouble with Trillions episode, so where Homer is working for the FBI, or Burns is there, oh, let me give you a tour of the place, and Homer would rather take a cyanide pill rather than listen to Mr. Burns tell the story. Or there's like the Hello Gutter, Hello Father episode where he goes to commit suicide after losing his 15 minutes of fame, and he's just so extra and so dramatic in these episodes, where it suits Homer's character of like, well, he would be You know the way even in episodes we do see Homer just react like he's screaming and crying hysterically in a minute, like over nothing. He's like, "Why, God?"
Yeah, and it's like over a video game or something.
Yeah,
or
he's a very
television being plugged out.
He's a very volatile person, kind of, and that suits Homer. But in this, obviously, again, this was the first, say, script written, I think, for the first season, so it's all like a rough draft. So it's just I feel the episode is kind of a rough draft, and
yeah, I feel that the themes like are quite heavy and just not treated with enough respect, if that's the right word. Maybe there's alcoholism in there, there's suicide in there, there's
and you see, and Simpsons does go into like dark comedy. It's just again, it's the tone is just too, it fluctuates kind of too much of like it's a comedy, but then you have this serious moment. But yeah, it's just off. Like that's all really.
And just before we move on to laugh stuffy beer, so you didn't like much of the episode, didn't make you feel too emotional, but did the ending get to you where they're all cheering for Homer?
They're like Homer. Oh, so again, yeah, the suicide thing is one thing, but then the rest of the episode when Homer becomes this kind of freedom fighter nearly, but when he falls into the crowd and they're all like Homer, but the bit where he's giving the speech before when he's telling them, oh, you need to go your own way, kind of, thank you for following me on my journey, and it's so sincere, and he's crying, and then it's so cheesy, but it's not heartwarming. It's so rushed. None of this sentimentality is earned.
So I think it's like fair to say then that the strongest emotion you had watching this episode was cringe.
Cringe, yeah. I think the episode itself is cringe and just like, ugh. Like my whole reaction is just this sort of face of just disgruntled.
So what would you give it for emotion out of 3 then?
I give it 1.
Oof.
Oof.
Can it make up for that in laughs though?
In laughs, there are potential jokes in this episode, such as, again, Homer's going to commit suicide. You can get humor in that. We've seen it before in other episodes. It's just that the timing is off. There's jokes where there's the boulder. There's little things that I could potentially chuckle at. It's just that
I think it would have been better if they had a bit more payback or a bit more kind of tie into the character. And obviously, like you said, like none of the characters are finalized in this one at all.
No.
But those type of jokes would work better if like it was for a character that.
Such as Moe. Moe's always going to commit suicide.
Yeah, I think so.
And it is a bit of kind of like
it would kind of be like just Moe's luck to find the boulder already there.
Yeah.
That would be funnier than Homer just like randomly.
Yeah, and even like one of the funniest and sort of jokes I remember of, it's not even Moe committing suicide, it's the professor when Moe wants to go back to his his bartending college, and he's like, well, it's like, I've got cancer, Moe. And it's like, ow. And then he walks into the water. Oh, professor, don't you want to take your shoes off before you go swimming? And, it's played I find that's excellent dark comedy there.
Yeah.
But just, the jokes are just too quick, blink and you miss them kind of jokes of, again, a line where it's, Homer going, well, live and learn. It's so quick. There's no kind of real... we've seen Homer struggle with the boulder, obviously, and that's meant to be the payoff to the joke, and then there's a bit where, he breaks Bart's piggy bank, and there is a thing of where he's just like, oh, this is terrible, not even enough for 1 beer. Yeah. And it is, again, that is, I think, again, because if it was just, we had a better understanding of Homer's character at this stage, or maybe even the line read, just something is just off about that. The way the joke is presented is just off, and potential jokes there, just not enough. The funniest thing I think you can get from this episode is looking at the faces in the crowd, or like laughing at Black Smithers, or something that's just like, that's off, that's weird.
The nearly uncanny valley nature of this episode from what you're used to in The Simpsons. That's you can see the hints of the wittiness, like, of future jokes.
And obviously, the guys writing this episode are, they've written for other comedies and that.
And they're really talented.
Yeah, so it's just, I think, again, very early days of The Simpsons.
I think you can tell
they didn't know what they were going
the
for.
formula for this was just throw jokes at the wall and see what sticks, kind of.
Yeah, and I'm actually, like, again, as I said earlier, I think it is quite a marvel nearly of kind of, wow, the main character of this sitcom is going to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And that's played as a 10-minute storyline. But I think obviously then the episode, you know, because we're just rushing from moment to moment, none of these jokes land at all.
So, laughs out of 3 Duffy Beer, how would you rank it?
1.
1 again.
Yeah. Do you think of 1 as well?
I think of 1, yeah. I just think comes off as a bit naff because of
naff, indeed.
just because of the crazy nature of the episode. You can't really get used to the characters, or it doesn't really play on any stereotypes of characters or anything like that, really.
No.
So the next one then is lines and memorability. Did this one stick out? A lot of firsts in this one.
There's a lot of firsts when it comes to first characters. You have Smiling Joe Vision, Blinky, Black Smithers, but Smithers I think in general. Terry and Sherry. We even have the mayor before Quimby.
We have a bit of Springfield lore here.
Yeah.
Before Quimby got in and corrupted the office of mayor.
Yeah, there's at the council meeting Homer's at, and there's just this mayor, yeah. And
he looks like a more professional mayor than Quimby, doesn't he?
I think so. I don't think he's much as a
doesn't have the ladies around
philanderer, yeah. But yeah, there's just I think Osho as well, first one of Osho.
Automan.
Wendell. Everyone's favourite. But again, a lot of first, even the first prank phone call.
Yeah, so there was. That's kind of like the jokes, though. It's like you can see the hints of something really good there.
There's so much, again, potential. It's just that, yeah, it's just everything's just kind of existing there, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. No, oh, that's the first time. But then you'll just see these characters used better and moments used better in another episode. And again, like I think the Smiling Joe Vision bit is really cool. The idea of them using even the production kind of, you know, little kind of fact of them using, you know, the way they would pull the film to make it look grainier.
They pulled it across the warehouse floor.
There's interesting little tidbits of information. It's just, not enough, I think. And there's no real jokes. There's, again, I think the most memorable thing is the ugly faces. Just every time I think of Homer's Odyssey, I just think of, oh God, do you remember the guys that were like the Siamese twins?
And the guy with the superhero mask.
Yeah, the Zorro mask.
Yeah, that bit with the crowd is like really cool. But not for the reason to think it is.
It's just, you know, and...
Was the dude that was with Homer an early prototype of Flanders?
Oh yeah, there's the guy.
He's like the union leader with Homer.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, here's Mr. Simpson. And he is nearly like a black version of Flanders. Just...
He's got the like
not
same
intentional, yeah. It's just that he sounds,
mustache.
I think it's Harry Shearer doing the voice, and yeah, just you're kind of going, oh, first appearance of Jasper as well.
Yeah,
whoa.
He's in the City Hall, isn't he?
In the City Hall, and just a lot of firsts, but nothing that I'm not going to be able to really quote this episode, you know, as like there's not a joke or a line that I'm like, oh.
That's true, and you do love quoting Simpsons, and I don't think I've ever heard you quoting Homer's Odyssey.
No, it's like a Bible verse a day, except it's a Simpson quote.
Oh, what are you going to give it out of 3? And can Smiling Joe Fish and bring it up for lines and memorability?
No, he nuked the whole thing. Nuked the score. I give it a 1.
So 3-1. So it's gotta do good in the story, Duffy Beer.
The story is when it all shines.
So what are we thinking of the story category then?
Well, the story, well, the 3 acts do not link up at all. So it starts as a Bart episode, it seems, that you're like, oh, Bart's going to go on a school trip and get in trouble maybe. And then it's going to focus on Bart. No, it's Bart goes on a school trip, something happens, Homer loses his job, Homer goes to commit suicide, Homer then campaigns for safety around the neighborhood. Homer then wants to take on Mr. Burns, and he is a union leader. Homer gets a new job, and it ends. And it's just like, what?
Yeah, so there's like really 3 concepts there that should have been made into full episodes.
Yeah. it could have had an episode of Homer trying to get a job and, feeling down because of that. And, you even could have done like maybe the suicide thing of like, oh, just,
Some kind of
it's
joke.
dramatic enough when you think of it. Homer was going to commit suicide, mostly because he couldn't get a beer.
Yeah. It's really...
Which it does tie in with Homer's character a wee bit. I find that, none of the three acts line up very well at all. And it's just all over the place. I find then as well that when I think of this episode, I think of other storylines that it kind of reminds me of say, dental plan episode where Homer is in the union and taking on Mr. Burns. I would obviously sooner watch that episode.
Yeah, they obviously revisited the idea of like a union episode, and but it does deserve its own full episode.
Yeah,
and then it's one of the best episodes ever.
Yeah, and it's focus. That is the main focus. That's where your storyline is. You don't need to break it up. Then
Bart going on a field trip could have been a full episode.
Yeah,
and
well,
then the consequences of that field trip.
The box factory.
The box factory.
And you have other things, and Homer, other stories where Homer goes to commit suicide, and it's just it's played better. And isn't that the one where he finds his mom? Was that the one where he threw the body off the bridge or something?
Oh yes, yeah.
There's just a lot of Homer's just very extra just to get that time. He's like, well, guess I'm not famous anymore. Better kill myself. Yeah, like, and it ties in so well with Homer's character. It's just in this episode, it's like, well, I'm not going to think of this. I think that's the first thing I think of of this episode, of kind of like when it's not the ugly background people, it's Homer going to commit suicide, and just how weird that is.
Yeah, and I really don't think that this is going to do well, but what would you score out of 3?
Well,
and story?
I give it a 3. No, I give it 1. Psych. I also just like, another thing which really annoys me about it is that it's so pointless, because at the end of it, when Homer is offered the job by Mr. Burns, we have the episode where, the episode where Maggie's born, Maggie makes a tree, the flashback one, and you see Homer in that job already, and then he quits, and then he's back at the job at the end of the episode, and he's there forever. And that's kind of how we have more kind of like flashback episodes where you see Homer get that job, or he gets his job in the nuclear power plant. And whereas in this episode, it's like, oh, this is how he got his job here. He was working in the nuclear plant, and then he got this specific job as the what is his job? Health and safety supervisor, supervisor something. And it's just so pointless in the end of it. This isn't even like, oh, this is actually how you see Homer get his job, because it's like, well, we've kind of, I know Simpson canon is all over the place, but when I think of Homer getting a job, I think of when the episode where Bart is born, or
which is the more advanced and polished episode. So
yeah,
you're going to take that one as the canon.
That's how you see him get his job in the power plant. And then when you see him go back in the context of now, that's why he's still in this job, because of Maggie, when he's here forever kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's just, again, Homer's Odyssey, its main flaw is that there's just better episodes that are just so similar to it that it's outshined.
Yeah, I think so. So that's Duffy Beard, and that's a 1 for emotion, a 1 for laughs, a 1 for lines, and a 1 for story. This really was the ranting instead of the ranking, and it's our first ever one that's sliding right into the dud category there.
It's in the dud category.
That's a 1 out of 5 or a 4 out of 12.
Yeah, and if people might like this episode, it's just not our cup of tea at all.
I don't think so, no. I think that when we rewatched it again, because it's not one that you would have revisited or you would have seen on TV that much.
No.
And when we rewatched it again, we were like, yeah, but this isn't really doing much for us.
It's a skip, yeah. It's fun to watch to make fun of it.
Oh, yeah.
Just look at all these ugly character designs and...
But I guess that's the beauty of The Simpsons as well, is that somebody else will get the good out of it.
Yeah.
So another category that we have is... Or sorry, not another category. Another section of the podcast that we do at the end is that we're both big fans of music.
Woohoo.
And we like to pick out a song that you think you could put to the theme of the episode, or that if you were making an AMV of the episode or a montage of the episode, what could you picture playing over it? And obviously, Duffy Beer, you're not too hot on this one. So.
There's songs about just like, this is crap, this is crap, this is crap. I'm choosing the song for this episode. I am choosing, it's Hank Williams. So an oldie but a goldie.
Oldie but a goldie.
I'll never get out of this world alive.
So the theme song for the life and times of Tim.
Yeah, best show ever.
This is move on to the life and times of Tim podcast.
Yeah,
now.
can we do an episode? Angry unpaid hooker.
Check it out on YouTube.
It's the best. But yeah, so the theme song of that show is also the song I'm choosing for this, because just the idea of like Homer's like, oh, my son got me fired, now I want to kill myself. And it's just there's a line of in the song where it's like, oh, everything's against me and it got me down. If I jumped in the river, I would probably drown. No matter how I struggle and strive, I'll never get out of this world alive. Yodel time. Woo!
Yeah, Duffy Beer is available for any yodeling needs.
If anyone needs a yodel for weddings or christenings. But I think, it's just a song of like just Homer, and he's bringing his boulder out for a walk to Suicide Park.
Looks like Mr. Simpson is bringing his boulder out for a walk. He's going to kill himself.
Oh, I know, he's going to
Bring his boulder out for a walk.
Never see that couple again.
No, you do. Were they voiced by Tracy Ullman as well?
Oh, the woman
was, yeah.
Yeah, I think she came back in the episode where it's like in when they're training Santa's little helper, and she's dog trainer, and she's also that cranky old woman.
She's the cranky old lady.
And then
too.
she moved. Her husband must have died. Or maybe he didn't, maybe he's just not in. But remember, they moved then, and that's when
George
Laura...
Bush.
No, not George Bush. That's the other side. How many sides of the Simpson house is there? It's like Flanders, and did Laura move then? We need a map now.
We need a map of Springfield.
Like, where the hell is the tree house?
Maybe multiverse Simpsons that we're looking at.
Yeah. But so I think that's a wrap up of Homer's Odyssey. Our journey, our Odyssey has come to an end.
Our Odyssey has come to an end, and
the boat has crashed.
Hank Williams is playing.
Hank Williams
in the
is
boat
playing.
as we're drowning.
As we're drowning, I throw my little cowboy hat out and I do one last yodel. And then the bubbles of the water kind of go.
So, yeah, I think that's it then for Homer's Odyssey. It's an interesting one to talk about.
Yeah, it's a fun episode to discuss, I think.
Season 1 is quite fun, I think, because it's like all over the place.
You just don't know what you're getting.
No. Season 1 is like a box of chocolates.
With no menu in it.
yeah.
Oh.
Unloaded and picked out.
Oh, Forrest Gump. He was dumber than we thought.
Alright, so that's it from us. Everybody take care of yourselves.
Take care of your pet boulders.
Hi diddly ho, it's time to go.
Hi diddly ho, it's time to go. Do 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 do.